next to me doesn't even want to come up. So before we say anything, Jock is sitting right next to me. He doesn't even want to come on the post game show. That's how bad it is. All right. I don't think we need to talk about the score or anything, but I think the first thing should be who gets fired tonight before they even get into the locker room. Blake Baker. Does Blake Baker go like the minute that he steps into the
Nah,
locker room?
man, Jazz. This to me, it has to be a Manny Diaz thing, man. Last year you blamed it on coordinators. This year it can't be on coordinators, man. It just can't. This is a second-year head coach. This is on him. It has to be on him.
Yeah.
Enough pointing fingers at everybody else but Manny Diaz. That's it.
So it has nothing to do with Blake Baker.
It does, but Manny Diaz has to get majority of the blame. Enough pointing the fingers at coordinators, man. That's it.
He is the leader that oversees everything.
He is the head honcho.
He does.
He is the one that kind of runs the culture in the locker room.
Okay, but is he the one that's going to get fired right now? No. Vish.
What up, Vish?
Who gets fired today?
No, guys.
He doesn't even want to talk.
I'm making our team and not showing up, but I told you guys I'd hop in here.
So tell me, Vish, what's going on? Give me your who gets fired tonight speech.
I mean, Baker's got to go, right? You can't have this.
Yeah, well, according to Manny and Paul, they think that it's just all Manny Diaz. I think Blake Baker's got to go though.
I think he's the one who's going to go, but this is Diaz's fault. I mean, if he's not responsible for the program, who is?
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
Everyone but the offensive coaches.
Hey, Paul bought a ticket for this shit. I mean, he's a refund.
And he's already home.
I paid StubHub fees. I paid for StubHub fees for this game, and I left after the third
That
quarter.
man needs a refund. Like, they need to give money back for this. I can't believe they charge people for that.
Bro, it's just I mean, I think Manny does have a point. I do think that, because to me, it's thinking that, I tweeted about this earlier, where it's senior night, it's a revenge game, it's on national television against a ranked opponent, and for them to just come out this play flat and to not play with any heart, like they literally took a 180 from last week's game. That's the thing that amazes me. And to me, it's like, as a player, you're probably going into thinking like, okay, this is a big game. We got to ball out. We got to show them what we're all about. And just to kind of just to come out, I don't know. They took this. They were so lackadaisical. Like this is like their performance. Kind of. This was like after the game, I was thinking like, I feel like I need a cigarette. I don't even smoke cigarettes. That's how bad I felt from this game. And to just, oh man, like I mean,
this is the most demoralizing game I've ever witnessed.
I mean,
this is the worst. This is the most embarrassing game I've ever witnessed.
They didn't try.
Yeah.
At all.
What was that?
At all.
And I'm not gonna name names, but I mean, I can't imagine anyone's gonna watch that back. But even on the first drive, there were guys that were like doing a pass rush and just letting up after they took a few steps when like weren't chasing the play down. I'll name someone who was. Phillips, even in the second half, was running downfield trying to chase plays down, but there were guys out there that were dogging it. I don't know what that was.
Amari Carter got trucked twice tonight.
There was
laid out twice.
There was a lot of plays where instead of kind of just shooting the gaps and going for it, there's a lot of read and react. It was a lot of stuff that players did during Al Golden's time. Like it was just like they tried to avoid blocks, if that makes sense. And they were kind of just okay, maybe the running back would come to me and I make the easy tackle. But then when guys were in position to make tackles, they didn't make tackles. Like I feel like I saw Carter break his ankles like twice. Carter was in position a few times, couldn't make plays. It was embarrassing. And you guys saw like every time that it was pretty much all halfback counters. Like if you guys have played Madden, they ran like a bunch of halfback counters, and there would be no one would even touch the UNC running back within like 5 or 10 yards. You just saw how big the holes were. Like those linemen were sealing everything.
The stats look fake. Like if you look at them,
yeah, they're Madden stats.
770 yards, 500 whatever on the ground. Like what the hell was that? Jeez.
On ABC they said it was the most combined rushing yards between two running backs on the same team in one game ever. It's an FBS record. They combined for 544 rushing yards. Javonte
Yeah.
Williams averaged 10.3 yards a
That's the
carry.
most.
Carter averaged 12.8 yards a carry.
That's the most rushing yards that Miami has ever given up. They're also there's only one team that's given up more than 773 yards total offense, and that was I think it was Memphis. I think is what Jock said. This is perfect. I've been saying this the entire season. Yeah, the lack of discipline on this team is a reflection of the coaching staff. Absolutely, 100%, Jamie.
Like,
I mean, I think that's you couldn't have said it better, man. It's
Yeah,
it's
and
clear.
I'd say like we didn't see anything in this game we hadn't seen before. We just didn't see it all happen at the same time. But like the stupid penalties we made on those early drives when I guess the game was still competitive, like we've seen that. We've seen missed tackles. We've seen giving up yards after contact. We saw all this. We just didn't see it on every single play like we did today. But there was nothing there that you're like, oh, that's a one-off and we haven't seen it before.
Right.
And that's probably the most disturbing part.
We just didn't see it at this level, and like you said, all together, right? It's unbelievable. It was almost so. Just seeing it live here, it was almost just like you're looking and you're just like, are you kidding me? That every time on a 2nd and 26 or on a 1st and 20, and they get 21 yards and they get 27 yards and I can rush, not a throw down the field. That was a simple counter play, and Carter or Williams rushed for 25, 30 yards. It's just unbelievable how many of those plays they gave up consecutively, continuously. They averaged, so UNC averaged a first down on every single play that they ran.
Yeah.
They didn't put one.
The worst
and
part
it's
was
really
that
frustrating because, like, before the game started, actually, none of you guys were watching on TV. So Herb Street said the way you stop this offense is you play downhill with your linebackers. Notre Dame did it. It'll be interesting to see how UNC adjusts to Miami doing that. And I'm thinking we don't do that. And then, like, after the first play, he literally said, "I don't know why they're exactly what Paul said. I don't know why they're reading and reacting with their linebackers. You let that UNC team go downhill, they're gonna run over you. You gotta bottle the run game up." It's just like, do we even game plan? Like, what was that?
Right, and that has to be on Blake Baker, right? Is preparation for his team is to know exactly what they have to do. I mean, it was so obvious that that's exactly what UNC's game plan was going to be, right? Run, okay, and then maybe they bite and then you throw it down the field. I mean, but they just did whatever they wanted the whole entire game. They could have thrown for 500 yards if they wanted to tonight. They just They just ran for 500 instead. It was just if it wasn't one thing, it was another. It was very easy. What do you want?
Listen, I understand that, and I totally agree with Vish that Blake Baker should get blamed. But when you go into halftime and I would think, make adjustments, correct? Your head coach is making adjustments. But yet, North Carolina goes out there and does the same thing. And again. Yeah. I'm sorry, man.
No,
That's
I
on
agree.
the head coach, bitch. That's on the head coach.
No, it's definitely on the head. I'm just saying, realistically, the head coach is coming back. I mean, we're 8-2 and it's clearly a soft 8-2. I don't think there's any doubt about that. A bunch of one possession wins against teams that aren't very good. But if we're talking realistic, the only realistic thing that can happen is the defensive coordinator right now. I don't. But of course, this is Manny's fault. He's in charge of the program. He's paid millions of dollars. Like this is also a reflection of what the players think of him. You're getting stomped in at halftime, and he's at half trying to get you fired up, and you don't go out there and play for him. That's not good. You would at least say, like, I respect that man enough that I'm gonna go bust. I know we're gonna lose anyway because we're down by like 20, but I'm gonna go bust my butt for that coach because I care about him. And if you don't do that, like that, do they respect him? Like, how do you not go out there and effort in the second half?
But isn't that
I didn't think we were going to win, but I thought someone would at least, like, try. Like, there were some guys, like I mentioned Phillips, he was hustling to the end of the game. There were other guys that were like, I'm going to make my one move. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to stand there.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of that. And that's where a lot of those runs ended up being, you said, 20, 30 yards on a 2nd and 26 because got past the first level and no one else was even really running.
But isn't it a bit surprising, Vish and Paul? Isn't it a bit surprising that now what we're hearing is, well, do they really respect the man? Just based off of some of the other games that we've played this year, right? How we've had to really fight but overcome so many things as far as unavailable players, COVID, whatnot. It seemed like maybe he did have this team trending in the right direction, the respect, and then all of a sudden you see something like this happen. So I don't know. I find that argument sometimes kind of it's a play on the moment, right? It's kind of like a hindsight. Okay, now I don't know. I'm a bit confused by that specific argument of well, do they respect this team because of what we saw before, right?
Well, I guess my point there is no. I totally get what you're saying. This is actually a team who's, I guess, identifying characteristic before this game. Not that they were necessarily that good, but that they always fought to the last play.
Right.
And King was good enough to pull them to the finish line multiple times, right? So I definitely buy that. So it is a good point. My point was, you're getting embarrassed out there, and your head coach comes in at halftime and says, "I need you to go out there for me and deliver something." And that was the 2nd and 26 drive. Like, I mean, there's something disconnected there. Either they had one eye on the end, the season's over, and they just weren't locked in. I don't know what it is, but it's been a repeated problem with the program over the last 2 years. Where
that's also a problem.
better, but if you look at his body of work, there was a lot of like the team didn't show up last year. So it's not the first time that's happened, but yeah, no, you're definitely right. There are times where this team dug deep and pulled wins out that didn't look probable.
Right.
But today wasn't that day.
No, it definitely wasn't. And like you said, I mean, and that's another issue though, is if this team was overlooking this game for a New Year's Six game, that's another problem as well. That's going back to, well, this team wasn't prepared mentally. And that's on the coaching staff and Manny Diaz as well. I think it's interesting to see what some people are writing here that says they won't return to greatness until they find the top of the heads of the university begin to care more about football. I mean, I think if you're talking about like the president and all that, Frank is doing a good job of caring more about football, I would think. But I don't know. I don't know if that's really it. I don't think that firing Blake James is really going to make a whole lot of difference. I just think you need to continue to find the right guys. And is Manny Diaz the right guy? Maybe he isn't, but I don't see him going anywhere. I think it's going to be. I definitely think that if it doesn't happen tonight, it's going to happen. Sometime this week. There's a little bit of time now. The only problem is recruiting, right? So do you want to fire a defensive coordinator before early signing period? That might be another issue.
I mean, how many guys do you think are coming here to play for Blake Baker? Frankly.
Yeah,
unless you're planning on like just going to, and I don't know how dramatically different a scheme you go to, where just like the players don't fit anymore that we've recruited. I don't really think that's going to be an issue. We didn't really lose anyone when we fired Enos, for example. Like, I mean, that had to happen, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's almost more telling if you give up 700 plus yards like this on national
and you
TV,
don't make a move.
you don't do anything. You're saying this is okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that to me is even worse.
Yeah, I'm with Vish on this. Where like this is, I mean, I don't know how you like, because I think even in the broadcast they showed Diaz when Diaz got fired from Texas, and that day Diaz allowed 550 yards of offense against BYU. I think that was when Taysom Hill was still there, and they pulled the plug on that right away. But this is another level. Like this was almost 800 yards of offense allowed. Like that is. I don't think another Madden thing, but I don't think I've even put up that much in Madden, on rookie mode. Like that is insane, and it didn't help that North Carolina had 40 minutes of possession, twice as much as Miami, and I think recruiting wise, I think that most of the recruits are definitely, at least from this. I mean, it feels like they're kind of playing more for the brand and the city. Kind of staying home. Being able to play in front of their friends and family, which is a big thing. And I feel like more so they're playing for Manny Diaz just because they've seen how nasty his defenses can be. I'm not even sure how involved Baker is with recruiting guys, to be honest. I don't see his name pop up as much as like Benda or Rumph, even Patke. So it's I don't know. I'm and things I'm not for, I think I can speak for all of us where we're not going to advocate for a man to lose their job. I'm sure Baker is a great man off the field and whatnot. But yeah, like I don't know how you can go about.
Unfortunately, being a great man off the field doesn't win football games for the program.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's got a contract, and he'll get a golden parachute like all these. So I think it's the grand scheme of things. A lot of people have lost their job in the last year that are like not recovered from it. He'll be fine, and he'll get another job. And if he does well there, he'll get another opportunity. They're cyclical. They're not everyone. I mean, Manny Diaz got fired from Texas. He's the head coach of Miami now. Sometimes you need that. So. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on there. I do agree. In the chat, people are saying like maybe we should not hire Diaz. I mean, that's done now, right? He's the coach. And one of the challenges I have is, I know we got most of the games and they got some of the TV money. Like they definitely took a revenue hit this year in terms of selling products, selling tickets. Like there's no money. So if you want to start firing the head coach, you're not like, we can all like, oh, we're going to bring in Urban Meyer. We're not bringing in Urban Meyer. Like this is not the time, just from a financial standpoint, to fire a head coach unless you got some rich donor that just wants to go out of pocket and hire someone. The money didn't come in this year, and I'd much rather give Diaz a chance to fix the defense. As Jazz said, we kind of fixed the offense this year. Now, how much of that is King versus the offensive coordinator going to find out down the road? But certainly, that offense was way better than it was last year, even today. And so he's shown that he can make bold decisions and fix half the team. He's got to do the other half. But I'd much rather give him that opportunity next year to fix the defense instead of, let's just start over again. And then you're out of your mind if you think we have like a bunch of money there where we're going to go bring in some elite head coach. It's going to be another like, maybe this will work thing. And we've been doing that for 20 years. We've been hiring coaches on the cheap for 20 years. And there's no way we're going to be able to do anything other than that right now. So realistically, our best option is to stick with Manny Diaz and hope he takes the same exacting standards he pushed on the offense in the last season and says, hey, that applies to my defense too. My defense is just as bad as the offense was last year, and now I got to do the same thing to it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, offensively, they've taken many strides. And I think I brought this up before where past couple of years, it kind of felt like I was more excited to watch the defense than the offense. You know, even going back to like the last few games of Malik Rozier and how he played, like it was just you didn't know what to expect with the offense. You were just hoping they put together something that would help them score. And it's finally nice to just see offense kind of take off this season. And I mean, granted, it's still, you can use a lot of work, especially on the O-line and receiver. But they've taken a lot of strides, you know, and big picture, they've gone from 6-7 to 8-2, possibly 9-2, or even 8-3. I'm not going to be a pessimist. That's just a possibility, which is a big improvement. But I mean, I think it is fair for us to kind of say that, you know, there's to really talk about the U being back, there's still a lot of things lacking. And I think I saw a tweet about this where I think we're wondering how Manny speaks to the team when they're down like 21-0 or something versus Saban, where Saban will yell at his players when they're up 42-0. You know, like that's unheard of. But I mean, that's the kind of excellence, that's the kind of bar that, you know, they set at those programs, and that's why those programs are kind of at that level. That's why, you know, we see Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, they all compete every year. It's because, you know, they expect to win games. Like this isn't the NFL where, you know, losing can benefit you because you can get a top draft pick next year. You know, like losing looks bad, you know, throughout the whole program, where you know, recruits see it, players will feel the effect of it, coaches can lose their jobs over it. I mean, same thing goes to NFL, but like there's no benefit at all from losing. So it's a really, I don't know. It's weird that we're having this conversation when Miami's 8-2 right now, which is pretty good.
Well, I think it's the disjointed nature of the season. Those wins, other than Duke, happened a long time ago. Like, it's almost Christmas. We're playing football still. Like, the season's been so weird. It's almost like you forget. Like that opening game was several months ago now.
Yeah.
It's just, so you're right. I mean, the team did go 8-2, and that's a fact. No one can deny that. I would say if you look at some of the teams they beat in the margin, it easily could have gone the other way. And that's why I want to look at like the actual like on-field play, and we saw huge leaps from the offense. Yes, the new quarterback helped a ton, right? If Jaron Williams was the quarterback this year, it would not have looked like that. I don't, duh,
I
but
don't want to talk about it. Oh God.
But what we did get is we got an offensive coordinator who got a quarterback that he was able to build a system around to allow that quarterback to excel. And even I'm a huge fan of King. He's not perfect, but that relationship worked really well. Like Clemson has the number 1 pick in the country as their quarterback. Like they're not doing it with bums. Like so, you need both. So yeah, King deserves a lot of credit for that. Lashley deserves a lot of credit for that too. And Diaz made that move. And so I don't think it's unrealistic to just say, hey, do the same in the defense. Like make that move on defense. And you know what? Maybe he is the better as a CEO type of head coach than getting his hands on everything. I mean, because right now he's very hands-on on the defense. That's why you mentioned you don't really see like Baker's name come up from recruits and all. A lot of that's because Diaz is the defensive guy for this program, and maybe he needs to just hire someone and trust that person to handle the defense to evaluate it, and he runs the program.
Mm-hmm.
And that might also help with some of the discipline issues we have. The penalties have been happening all year. Like this wasn't the first time, and a lot of them are unforced. Like the jumping off. Like how many times do we jump off sides? Like I mean, what is that? Like some of that stuff you got to drill out of them. So,
damn, that's a good question.
Well, let's go with that one.
Man, I mean, I'll admit off rip that I don't really look into AD or athletic directors throughout the country like big names like that. So I'm not going to confidently give you a name that I would suggest. I mean, there is I know like one guy that I thought about was I think the Wisconsin guy Alvarez. I've heard good things about him. I think he's a local. I think he's a Miami guy too. I think he's from the area, or he has ties to FIU or something. So he kind of
he worked with Donna Shalala at Wisconsin. That's why his name was always rumored when. So he doesn't have any actual. He's a Wisconsin guy through and through. He's never leaving there. He coached there for decades and then became the AD. He's
never leaving. Mind about that. See, that's how off the game I am.
Well, I mean, it's hard because we don't. If an AD is good, he's actually nameless. We only know the names of the bad ones. Because if they do their job, while the programs are healthy, the coaches are getting the publicity. If the AD has to constantly be talking to people, it's because the coaches aren't doing well. Yeah, that's a tell right there. Like, who's Alabama's AD?
I have no idea. I'm gonna look that up now.
Because Nick Saban's running that program, right? Like, I mean, you don't care who the AD is. So if we start, I do. It's a very good question because ultimately the AD is the one who, upon Rick retiring and giving back all of this money. So for the first time, we were cash rich. We weren't paying off like dead money to coaches that we'd fired. Decided that the best course of action was, without even interviewing anyone else, to go to Temple and steal back our previous defensive coordinator with no head coaching experience. So I am totally on board with the thinking that perhaps if we need to evaluate Manny Diaz, this person should not be the one doing it. It should be someone new that comes in, can take a fresh set of eyes, evaluate Manny for a year or two, and decide, is this the right person to lead the program forward? Because right now, Blake James cannot. We could have gone 0-11. Blake James cannot justify firing Manny Diaz with the way he hired him. It was the process. Whether Diaz worked or not, we don't know. Like you said, a lot of improvement this year from last year. But the process by which we hired him was so stupid that any course of action that leads to him firing has to go blow back on the AD. What were you even thinking? And so he's always going to be, if he evaluates Diaz, it's always going to be slanted towards, I got to keep him in that job. And that you can't have that. But in terms of who should replace, I mean, I don't have a Rolodex of athletic directors, sorry. But it is, but it is an issue when the person evaluating him is the one who hired him and did so with such a poor process. And again, I don't think anyone would really fire a coach after going 8-2, regardless of how bad this performance is. So I know a lot of our fans are out for blood, and there's baggage there because last year, I mean, good Lord. So it wasn't. So we came into this year with skepticism, and what we saw today was, frankly, one of the worst performances in school history, and that's the third time we've been able to say that about a Manny Diaz team in the last 2 years, because FIU and Louisiana Tech also are on that list. Yeah. So I get all that anger, but again, realistically, he's been here 2 years as head coach. I know he was the defensive coordinator, but he's been the head coach for 2 years. We just went 8-2, and it'll be very expensive to fire him, and we don't have money. So as much as that might be what some people want to do, that's not really going to happen. But I do have a problem with the person evaluating him being the person that kind of used a broken process to hire him. That's biased towards finding a reason to keep him. Not that we should fire him now, but if it becomes one of the issues we've had over the course of time is, and this is actually not the case with Rick, which is why that hire is so frustrating. Our coaches have all hung on too long, and it just makes the mess bigger for the next coach to clean up. Like, how did Golden stay here 5 years? That team was terrible, right? And that's just a bigger mess that Rick has to clean up when he comes in. And if we hang on to Diaz too long, and again, I don't think any AD would fire him after an 8-2 year. I mean, we were ranked in the top 10 before this game. Like, yeah. I think we're, to your point, we kind of forgot about all the 8s. And now we're just like, we got blown out by Clemson, we got blown out by North Carolina, we still suck. There were 8 wins in there too. But if it gets to the point where a reasonable athletic director would say we have to make a move here, I don't think this one would. And that's a problem.
I'm with you. I remember just being in the Philippines when they hired Diaz, and I remember them, like, I was so surprised at how fast they hired him rather than going through like a lengthy coaching search. I mean, granted, it was like a month before signing day, so it definitely messes with recruiting a bit. And I mean, you saw that in the final class that they came up with. I mean, because I mean, I like that. I think at the time I liked that Diaz had the familiarity with the program, just because, you know, I mean, he's a Miami kid. His dad was a mayor of Miami. And I figured that, okay, if anyone knows University of Miami football other than alumni, it's this guy. It's this guy. I can't really. I mean, other than the lack of head coaching experience at the time, then yeah, I mean, I pretty much was like all aboard with this guy. I mean, I can't complain. But I mean, I don't know. What were some of the other names that were mentioned? I know Cristobal was in that conversation.
I mean, his name always comes up. I don't know how realistic that was either. I mean, those are, again, money matters, and frankly, we don't have much. And so, like, going against Oregon's dollars is probably not a battle you're going to win. If it's Mario, it would be he wants to come home. It's not going to. So that's why his name always gets mentioned. I mean, the truth is there were no other names because, like you said, it happened so fast. Yeah, it's pretty clear they didn't really do a coaching search. You couldn't have possibly done one that quickly.
Yeah,
and we don't know when Rick told them, but maybe they'd already like known for a little bit of time and they'd kind of done some due diligence. But I mean, my biggest issue here is, and I actually agree with what you're saying about Diaz, which is why I kind of think maybe he's better as a CEO head coach. He knows he knows the area. He can recruit well. He can be a good conduit for the program, and then hire really good coordinators to do the X's and O's stuff. And he can definitely be a good leader of the program. Like you mentioned, Saban's not coaching like on the field, like coaching the defense. Like he's got paid assistants. So is Dabo Swinney. These guys aren't like, oh, let me fix the defense. They're like, no, I'm going to pay someone a lot of money that's like at the top of that field to do that job. And in football, especially in college, where you have limited coaches, the number of coaches on your staff is limited. You need to hire the best at every position and let them do their job. If your head coach is getting his hands into the defense, who's coaching the team? Like, who's the head coach then? You're taking time away from doing those other responsibilities. And when you see a team that's sloppy, makes a lot of penalties, has uneven motivation, that's where the head coach makes the biggest impact. So I do think he can still work here if he's got to do what he did to the offense, the defense. Just take a look at the whole thing and try to fix it. He's got to acknowledge the problem and try to fix it. But in terms of but I do think he has the profile, like you said, that would fit someone that should do well here. But we're actually messing up like the tangible stuff. Mm-hmm. Like the actual, like the schemes are bad. We can't tackle. Like, like that's just football stuff. It's not. And frankly, that's usually not like that's getting good assistant coaches, good position coaches. Like we need to make sure we're getting the best of the breed because we're trying to compete with the best, right? If you're fine winning 6, 7, 8 games, great. But if you actually want to say, like, we want to play with Clemson and Alabama, if that's the long-term plan, we're obviously not there yet. You can't make these little compromises. And we're constantly making these little compromises. Well, we can get away with Blake Baker because Manny can coach the defense. Like, no. Big programs don't do that. They get
why'd you hire him in the first place then? Why'd you hire Baker in the first place?
They get the elite defensive coordinator to coach the defense. Like, they don't say, well, the head coach can plug that guy. And we've done that multiple times. We've done that with Randy Shannon, too. He's got the defense, too. We don't need to worry about the defense. No, he needs to coach the team. He needs to be the head coach.
Yeah.
You need a great defensive coordinator, too. And we've just constantly, Rick was calling plays. Like, no, get out of that position and get a real offensive coordinator.
That was so bad. I remember watching Rick's offense. Go ahead, sorry.
Big claps.
I remember just
was
watching,
before the snaps.
I just remember watching Rick's offense and being able to predict the plays from my just watching TV and I was able to predict because they only had like 5 plays. It was like a running back. It was just a half the running back inside, or just everyone runs flies. They ran just those two a lot. It was irritating.
Right, but he was not a good offensive coordinator. He was a good offensive coordinator in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was 20 years ago. Like, the game was
the quote where he was saying, I remember he was pointing at saying, like, yeah, I remember, like, these plays have been working for the past 30 years. And I'm like, huh?
Game changed, man.
Yeah. I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious? You're not. So you're just going to go with, like, what's been working.
Right, but we
in terms of like plays that we've seen for years, for decades even.
Yeah, and we just have a string of examples of us trying to compromise, trying to get away with things instead of like, no, like you're trying to compete at an elite level, and other big programs are not making those compromises. They're trying to hire the best person in each position and allow them to do their job well. And we've constantly been like, well, the head coach can call plays, the head coach can fix the defense. Like you're not going to compete at that level with that.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think and that's why I like that he was able to he pulled the plug on Enos after 1 year. Like, he knew that it wasn't working, the offense was pretty much sucking. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And he was like, okay, I think they were paying him like 7 digits a year, and they were like, still
paid a lot of money for him,
to pluck him from Alabama.
And I'll tell you the other thing I liked about that move too. It got him out of his comfort zone. This is not the style of offense that Manny Diaz would want to run. But he's like, you know what? It's broken. I'm going to hire the best offensive coordinator I can and let him run his show. And now he just needs to do the same thing on the defense.
He wanted the offense that Enos wanted to run.
No, he did. He did, though. He wanted a pro style, and he wanted like a slower offense because it helped his defense out. And that's what he wanted to run, and that's what he hired, and it didn't work at all, obviously. And then he had the guts to make that move. And there'll be this is going to be a more difficult move for him to make, though, because this is his defense. Blake Baker can be sitting there. Blake Baker's his guy. He's a defensive coach. He has to admit the thing that he takes his most pride in stinks, and it needs a reset. And if he can do that, he can be successful. If we come back in with the same defensive staff, it's hard to imagine. They've not been good since Diaz wasn't the defensive coordinator. And that's not a coincidence. Because he's got other stuff to do too. He can't call the defense and be the defensive coordinator and the head coach. It's too much work.
So in your opinion, what moves should Manny make? Not even just short term, but let's say like even in the offseason going into next season. What do you think he should do, in your opinion?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is definitely, obviously, we have to look at the defense, right? But overall, what is the actual plan to get from where we are to, let's take this game off the table, but when we got on the field with Clemson, like today was like no effort and just heads up our, what's, and it was terrible. But when we got on the field with Clemson, you could look at that and be like, player for player, like maybe Brevin Jordan could start on their team.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And it's just, how do we advance the program, right? Because you get the talent level up, you're not in a close case, and frankly, the coaching doesn't matter as much. So, I mean, I think that's just continue to build on the recruiting classes. I think we need more balance in our classes. We like kill it at some positions, and then like you mentioned, the receivers are not there. Our linebackers have struggled. We secondary, like, I mean, there's some positions where we're really weak, and then like Meanwhile, defensive line like Rousseau didn't even play this year, and we still had like 2 first-round picks out there. So I mean,
They reload like it's
we've had
on defensive
we've
line.
had these. Yeah, the offensive line's been a problem. Like we have these like highly rated recruiting classes, but they're not balanced. And we got to balance out to get more across the board talent. And then it's just overall, just like it's great that we win close games. We got to start killing people.
Yeah.
Because the more you get into those games, like last year, 6 and 7 easily could have been 8 and 4, right? Or whatever. Like you lose a bunch of close games this year, we won them. You keep playing those games, you're going to be a 6, 7, 8 win team. You're not, and obviously 8 and 2 is not the same thing as if we played 12 games. It might have been 10 and 2. So this 8 and 2 was not 8 wins. It's better than that. But like that's the thing. It's getting that attitude back, because what tends to happen, and this happened after the 2017 season where we went to the Orange Bowl, ranked in the top 5, where we're like, this is all great, and it's like, I mean, Langham had to have 2 miracle catches. Like the record's great. It was fun. But you got to continue to, like, every time we have a little bit of a success on the record sheet, we're just like, oh, we're good. Everything's good. And it's like, no, you got to evaluate the performances. And that's why we need to look at the wins and things we should do better in the wins, things we should do better in the losses, obviously, but just overall the quality. The goal should be to win every game by 50. And how do we get there?
Agreed.
Because you can squeak your way to wins and put one isolated good record up there, which we did this year, which we did a few years ago. But if you want sustained excellence, it's every single thing you do, you have to do it at an elite level, and we're not close to that yet. So for me, it's just put the plan together to do that. It's better talent. It's frankly like attention to detail and the way we practice, like the whole thing with the penalties and the number of times our players jump off sides. Like, why is that? I don't know. But you not need to address that, and then it just, that's how you build. Like we could win 8 or 9 games next year and be a much better team, and where you're not winning these close games, because that's the next step, right? So that when you show up with a team that you're better than, you do what we did to Duke, but you do that every week. Because Virginia Tech was not good. We had to pull that game out the last minute. Like there were some wins there against bad teams that we were in games with. If you get into games like that, then you're just gonna eventually lose, and then and so to me that's the big thing.
Yeah, no, I'm agree. I've always like tried to envision how I would run a program if I was a coach, and I think the one thing that, like, last week's against Duke, I mean, was great. I mean, it was reassuring, and everything you saw how everything pretty much went right, but it was just knowing that, okay, that the fact that they are light years better than this team, and they dominated, and the score showed that they won by 48. And and to me, it's all about not even just, it's, if you know you're better than the team you're playing against, go out and prove it. Don't just be comfortable with knowing that, actually play like it. And that's why we squeaked out some of these games against, like, I think it was NC State and stuff, like, and games like that, but just like they weren't very clean wins, and they were playing 3 quarters of bad football versus 1 quarter of good football, and it's like when you talk about, let's say, like Clemson, for example, Clemson, I think there's been a couple of games this year where they're up like 28-0 or 35-0 after the first quarter. Like, we need that kind of high bar, and like obviously by the score you can tell, like, they're, from the first snap they're going 150%. 100% basically. They're going full speed. They don't care who's in front of them. They're going to dominate, and that's pretty much what North Carolina gave us tonight. Where, like, they just outcoached Miami. They came more prepared, and I know you brought up the whole thing with them being 6-7 last year, and then a few games. Thing is, I'm okay now. I'm kind of thinking of 2 things now, where 5 of those 7 losses were by 7 or less. So you're definitely right on that. A lot of those games could have went the other way easily, and it's an improvement, because we pulled out those kind of games this year where D'Eriq King had to work some magic to get a win, which is good. I think of this as just something to build on, and you just kind of hope that Manny does recognize his shortcomings, where there's, because you got to think, like, with coach, in regards to coaching, like, or just how the team prepped, like, okay, then what was this team doing this week in practice? Like, what was their mindset? Because there's so many factors with this game that I mean, it wasn't a must win, but in my eyes, it was a must win just because, like I know we both know that this team is still probably 2 or 3 years away from really competing, for the playoff. But to overachieve, that's fine too. Like if you can overachieve, go ahead. But I mean, if it's just like they definitely, I don't know how they underprepared. They really just they didn't come ready, and I don't know. That's one big question in my eyes. Like if I had one question for Manny, it's just like what were practices like this past week? Because you know, hopefully the coaches weren't taking it lightly. Hopefully the players weren't taking it lightly. Um, I mean, I'll probably watch the press conference after just to get an idea of what Diaz would say. But man, like it's uh,
Yeah, no,
all
they
we can do is
weren't.
just sit at home.
I don't think there's anything else to say about it. They weren't ready to play. Like I don't know what that was, but I don't think the schemes were put in correctly. North Carolina, I've seen them play a few times this year. They didn't do anything different. They run tempo. They run off tackle a lot. They use their running game to grind on you, and the key to stopping them is to stop their running game. And we came out completely unprepared for their running game, and it didn't make any sense. And I'm not sure exactly what that was. So, and then I to your point, I don't know if the team had just checked out. Like it's a weird game to not show up for.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we had actually had Georgia Tech next week, like that would be a game we'd be like, I could see their heads not being in it. It's a bad team. It's December 19th. Like the actual ACC championship game is on the same day. Like that.
Yeah, like what are we playing for?
Yeah, that feels
kind of
like
thing.
a game where I could say like human factors can come into play. This is two teams that are ranked. This is your last home game now, which they found out before the game, right? I mean, this almost feels like a self-motivating game. And what is wrong with our program where we come out there not motivated for a game like this? I mean, this was it, right? This is the last game of the season, and you're playing a good team. You're at home. I know there's no crowd, but some of those kids are never going to play in that stadium again, and that's the way they went out, and they seemed okay with it. And to me, that's the part I have a problem with.
Yeah, no, it's saddening. I just thought of a point that you said that made me think of something, and now I forgot it again.
It's been a long season, man, and it's been a long day.
Yeah,
Did not think the post game show would be, we gave up 778 yards and 62 points. Did not think that would be the post game show.
Not at all. And I'm wondering like what have teams actually had more yards of offense than North Carolina ever? Like I don't know how bad was this defensive effort amongst all the horrible defensive efforts in college football history, because they were just running in circles. Like I contemplated.
I mean, there are teams that have put up thousands. That's a thing that's happened before, but those were on purpose. And what I mean by that is that was when Houston used to do their run and shoot. They first unveiled it, and that was in the wishbone era. No one even had cornerbacks on their rosters, and it was just we can't cover receivers. And they would intentionally be in the fourth quarter trying to throw deep passes to run the yardage up. I mean, the sad thing is this was a team that came out in the second half in North Carolina and tried to run the clock out. On that first drive, they took 7 minutes off the clock or whatever. They were milking the clock down. They were we're going to run this clock out. And we were so bad, they kept scoring.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, where when your team runs the ball out to run the clock out, but we couldn't stop the run all game. So they were just going to score regardless.
I mean, I'm looking at that drive. What was that drive to start the second half? 13 plays, 75 yards, 7 minutes and 36 seconds. They scored 62 points, and one drive took half a quarter.
They didn't even throw the ball that much either.
No, and that's why this yardage-wise is not the worst performance ever in college football history. Is what we're talking about. I think it is in UM history, right? Have we ever given up 770?
Yeah. No, it's the worst in UM history.
Yeah, so it's definitely the worst in school history. But in terms of aesthetics, a team that's running so the clock goes faster, so you're not the game shorter, giving up that many yards. I mean, how do you give up 62 points when they took a half a quarter to score one of their touchdowns? That means they scored 55 points in the rest of the game. Like, that's just, and that was the most frustrating part too. They came out in the second half and they're like, I think it was, what was it, 23 points or something? It was, or what was it at halftime?
Yeah, 34,
it was
34-10, I think, right?
Yeah, something like, yeah. So it was theoretically 3 possessions, and they know their defense isn't good. So they came out in the second half, North Carolina's mindset of, let's work the clock a little bit and shorten the game just to avoid any like miracle comeback. And that's why they're running it on 2nd and 26. And then they're getting first downs and scoring anyway. And at the end of that drive, they basically accidentally scored a touchdown. The goal with that drive was for them to run the clock down, and then they scored. And they'd taken half the quarter up, and they'd scored a touchdown, and they're like, the game's over now. But they came out in the second half because they're a tempo team also. But they came out in the second half to milk the clock and just get out of there with the blowout win. And then they kept scoring. And that, like, we couldn't stop anything. It is mind blowing. They let up in the second half. They were just like, we're just gonna run it on every play.
Yeah.
And they're ripping off 15, 20, 30 yards in every play.
Like, you knew what they were gonna do, yet Miami couldn't stop it. That was the sad part. Like, they were just running the same halfback counter. I think the running back would always run through the B gap. I think it was the B gap, mostly the B gap. But the left guard was always getting a seal off the next level, and then you just see this just open field of grass between the linemen and linebackers. You're just
There's
like,
just and it doesn't, just like no outside contain. And no,
tackling was horrible.
I mean, outside of a few things, like, why don't you bring like the corner off the edge or something just to blow the play up? Like, at some point, change it up. What is the worst thing that's going to happen? He throws a touchdown? Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that better than them running for 10 yards to carry at least? Actually, they way more than 10 yards to carry, but why is just, if they're going to score, like, mix it up, send the house, do something, like, try to disrupt it. That was the other thing that really frustrated me. It looks like we were just like accepting of this.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like we really like tried to attack back or fight back or do anything. It was just a lot of like, well, I guess they're just going to run for 30 yards, okay? And that does go to the coach a little bit. Like, a lead has to, right? I mean, you got to try something.
Mm-hmm. Shout out
Shoot
to
the gaps.
Shoot the gaps, just blitz.
Something.
Put in the box. They might as well just put in the box, to be honest.
Right. What was the worst that was going to happen at this point? They're scoring a touchdown every drive anyway.
Yeah.
Then we still managed to get beat deep for a couple of deep passes. So what were we even protecting?
Yeah. Even
before they stopped throwing, they were hitting us over the top.
Yeah. I know Ivy got burned a few times.
Yeah, and one of them was like a really deep pass when we had him pinned.
Yeah. That was like a 76-yard pass or something like that.
Honestly, they had so many big plays. It's all running together on me.
This is a very dark moment in UM history that I think, there's been a lot of dark moments in UM history the past 2 years, actually. Louisiana Tech, FIU.
No, I mean, the argument against Manny Diaz is his overall record, if you take both years, isn't great. It's 14-9. And then if you look at the aesthetics of his career, he has 3 of the worst losses in school history, flatly.
Yeah.
And what's his best win? There isn't a ranked win. There's not really a win. It's probably NC State this year. They're like 7-3. I think that's probably his best win. Louisville last year, I think, was 8-4. So it's one of those two. Louisville there's nothing really to write home about there either. So on the other hand, like to your point, a lot of improvement this year, especially on offense. And I mean, we have had 1998, like we did something similar against Syracuse and then beat UCLA the next week. But you know what? I'll tell you what happened after that UCLA game. Fired the defensive staff. We won, but it was like 48-45 or whatever it was. Like, you can't win playing defense like that. And that's when he brought in Greg Schiano and the program got better. And so you gotta make those tough decisions. So even though we're 8-2, if Diaz's attitude is we went 8-2 after going 6-7, everything's better. We just gotta stay the course. It's gonna like a rubber band's gonna snap right back, and we're gonna be 6 or 7 wins next year.
Oh yeah.
But if he takes this as a growing point and like, okay, we're better, but that defense is not good enough and works on it, then we can take another step. Like I said, we might not have as good of a record next year. We might pick up more losses. Hopefully, we're playing 12 games. That's kind of back to normal. But we might go 9-3 or something. But we could be a much better 9-3. Like if we went 9-3, beat a ranked team, 8 blowout wins, and then lost some tough games, like that's progress over this. Because winning a bunch of close games against bad teams is good, but you got to get to the point where you're not in close games against bad teams. That's the next step for this program.
Yeah. Agreed.
And obviously, you can't have stuff like what happened today. Like I don't know how to describe. It still hasn't really sunk in how bad it was because it was like a snowball rolling downhill. And now only when you look at the box, you're like, wow, 62-26.
I saw it in person, so I know all about it, and it was just I think I remember just thinking like, oh shoot, it's 21-0, no 21-3 after the first quarter, and I'm just like, okay, hopefully they wake up soon, but it just never came.
But that was my thought too. So I actually tweeted out something like the game's not even close to over yet because they have a bad defense. I'm like, we can score points,
Yeah,
and then we put a touchdown or two on the board, and then like the defense gets some energy out of that, and we get back in this game, and then. Literally before people started making fun of me for saying that it was already like 35-3, it was just like, okay, never mind.
mm-hmm.
Boy,
This
is
one to watch.
on the one hand, it's like this is legitimately one of the worst performances in school history. On the other hand, it's like, do you just flush it because it's like so off? Like I don't even know what to do with this. There's not anything redeeming that happens. Like it was that bad.
Yeah. It was the flip of what happened against Duke, where everything went right, and if you looked at it from a Duke standpoint, nothing went right for them. But I mean, if anything, shout out to you guys, Jalen Phillips, Bubba Bolden, even to Corey Couch. I mean, a lot of those long plays, Couch still was, running down the field, catching receivers, stop touchdowns. There
were a few guys. I mean, King has not let up for one snap this year. There's definitely. There are a lot of guys on this team that even in this performance went out there and busted their ass. And you know what? It's been a long season for these kids, and we should definitely commend them for that. When we say the whole team quit, it wasn't the whole team.
Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, it was a disproportionate number of them. But there are players on this team that went out there when we were down by 20 and 30, and they were still chasing plays 5 yards downfield and making those hustle efforts and King running into linebackers and taking a hit even though the game was over in the first half. Like there were guys out there that were still really trying to knowing that we weren't going to win, but still like I have this U on my helmet and I'm not going to dog it with this U on my helmet. And those are the guys we need more of.
For sure.
Because there were guys out there, and I'm not going to name names and call them out, but you can. I mean, if anyone wants to go watch, just watch. I encourage you to watch the defense in the first quarter because this is when the game is still competitive. There were guys that, when the play went away for them, just stopped running, and I didn't even see that. You'll see it if you go look at the film, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But it wasn't just one of them, and it's just like, what are you? And I get. So I'm also sympathetic though. It's been a really long season, and there's a pandemic going on, but my point is that if like anyone wanted to opt out, like I would not begrudge them that at all. But if you're gonna go out there and play. Like don't go out there and dog it.
Yeah.
Because someone else could be playing. Like there's a guy on the bench that would kill to be out on the field. And you're out there, then you play. Otherwise, just take yourself out of the game. Like I don't. The effort stuff is a thing that like you have so few opportunities to do this, and I don't know. It's inexplicable to me how you can put that helmet on and go out there, run out that tunnel, and then just like I'm not chasing this play. I'm not running after this. I just don't get it.
There's other guys that definitely would die to be in some of the positions of, where the players are at. So yeah, I know. I'm honestly I do remember a few players that could have played with a little more effort tonight, and it's disappointing. But I don't want to. We're about to hit an hour, and I don't want to dive too deep into this and cry myself to sleep tonight. So I think this is a good place to end it. Thank you again.
Let's do it on a little bit more positive note. So obviously, unless someone does something really weird, we're not going to the Orange Bowl anymore. But I mean, there's still a bowl game. Let's see. Like sometimes how you deal with failures like this is where you build your character. And it's not good that we got our brains beat in, but let's see how we come out in the bowl game. And we're going to play someone, and probably going to be pretty good. Like we're not going to be in the top 10 anymore, but we'll probably still be ranked. We'll get a decent opponent, assuming there's a bowl game, which I still think we'll go to a bowl game. I think there'll be enough teams willing to play where we'll get an opponent. So let's see how there's one more game, and there's an opportunity to recover from this. And I think this can be either, we mentioned earlier, the Syracuse 66-13 loss. We came back next week and won against the top 5 team. Like there are opportunities to build after, frankly, disasters. And and this can go one of two ways. You come out in the bowl game and dog it again, like that's what we did last year. So there's an opportunity here. And you know what? Bowl games are fun. So we still got another game left. This is gonna hurt for a while, but actually bowl season's there. So
yeah, bowl game will be a telling tale of how the culture is and where the team stands. You know, because it's just like I assume that most of these players are angry. They're disappointed, obviously, but like they're very angry about how, you know, they came and played out today. I mean, they're gonna look at the tape and be like, "Wow, that was really." Hopefully, this is what I would do. Yeah. They just saw themselves and they're like, "Wow, this was us. There's no way this was us." You know, and you just hope that they would kind of take out revenge on whoever they play in the bowl game. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be that. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be in the Orange Bowl. I mean, I think they kind of really dashed their hopes on that.
Well, so
it's
basically if Clemson and Notre Dame go to the playoffs, then if they both end up in the playoffs, then the Orange Bowl gets the highest available ACC team, which after today has to be North Carolina.
Yeah.
In theory, we have a better record, but you'd be out of your freaking mind to rank us in front of them. So
yeah.
So yeah, it should be North Carolina in that game, or Clemson or Notre Dame if one of them doesn't make the playoff.
Oh yeah, that too.
So that was our path to the Orange Bowl was Clemson, Notre Dame in the playoffs, and then we go to the Orange Bowl as the highest left ACC team. That I mean, it has to be North Carolina.
Yeah, they proved it tonight.
Yeah, there's no way you could justify ranking us in front of them. So.
Yeah.
But we should but we're the next in the pecking order, so we should get the next bowl, which should be a pretty good one. So.
They should be in a pretty good bowl, regardless, too. But I think I'm gonna cap it off there. Thank you again, Vish.
We beat FSU by like 40 points, and that was fun. So good season.
Yeah, that's the one game that we look at too. You know, I think we beat the brakes off of them. We beat the brakes off FSU. Even though I don't know how North Carolina lost FSU, like geez,
let's not talk about that because then we'll realize that North Carolina is actually not that good. Let's not go, we didn't just lose.
Then that makes us look worse too.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. Just we played our biggest rival and beat the crap out of them and embarrassed them, and half their players quit. And I don't know why Manny's putting Messi's face up there, but let's just All right, let's end on that note. We blew out FSU, so that one.
Yes, hello Madrid. Yes. Manny, thank you.
Big win today. Someone won today.
They won the Derby, 2-0. Love to see it. So they're now 6 points behind Atletico in the standings.
3 points, but Atletico has a game in hand. So
yeah. So thank you, Vish, for hanging on for the hour. Thank you, Manny, for hanging on as well. We're gonna be on again Tuesday night to kind of have like a early signing period show, which is going to be lots of fun. There's a lot of moving parts with recruiting right now. I'm going to stay tuned to a lot of updates I'm getting, and I will definitely inform you guys on what's happening. So you will see who the next stars of University of Miami are next year. That came out weird. But you'll see the future stars. There we go. You'll see the future Duke Johnsons and Tracy Howards and all those names. But thank you guys for hanging on. Thank you, Vish. Thank you guys again. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.